Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Now, today, I'm going to go break down some things that there's a lot of confusion about because they can look similar in action, but they are different things because of the context and because of the intent. But the first one I'm going to go over is the silent treatment versus going no contact. Then I'm going to go over stonewalling versus taking a break from a conversation versus shutting down because you're abused. And we're going to take a look at those things too. Certainly not late, Phil Bradley. Always on time, just like a wizard. So what is the difference between the silent treatment and going no contact? The silent treatment is a punishment used to manipulate and to control. Narcissists like to do this because, say, they're called out for one of their problematic behaviors, or you do anything that they don't like, they want to punish you in an attempt to withhold love and to make it more likely you don't do that again. They want to condition you to not do that behavior. For example, if you call them out to show their displeasure, they will withhold their love and attention and affection and give you a silent treatment to punish you. That is manipulating you, and that is to control you. That is not going no contact. That is the silent treatment. Silent treatments are punishments. Usually what precedes a silent treatment is something like being called out, is something like you've done something that they didn't like. And it's not just a normal thing, right? Because on the flip side here, it would be if someone goes no contact. Going no contact is a completely different thing. And that's a healthy thing to do in situations where someone is not going to respect your boundaries. But the silent treatment is much more arbitrary, and it can be fickle. And oftentimes it won't make much sense to a lot of people. But again, it can look similar to going no contact. And what makes it even trickier is narcissists will tell you, I'm going no contact, when in reality, they're ghosting you, abandoning you, or giving you a silent treatment. So that's what makes it tricky too. They'll say, I'm just using no contact. Well, if they're trying to punish you and they're not just trying to protect themselves, that is not going no contact. Yes, they're not in contact with you, but the intent and context tells you it is something different. They are trying to punish you, and they're giving you a silent treatment, withholding love and affection in order to get to you, because ultimately they still want to control and to manipulate you. That is another big difference between going no contact. That is not the goal of no contact at all. An example of this would be if a narcissist refuses to respect your boundaries. They refuse to stop mistreating you, twisting and distorting what you say, using Darvo against you, deny, accuse, reverse victim and offender. If they won't listen when you speak up, which we know they're not going to listen. They are going to continue to twist and distort, blame shift, flip the script, play the victim, whatever it is. They're going to make a show out of not understanding us and twisting our words. And when that happens enough, they leave you no choice. The only way to protect yourself at that point is to go no contact, because there are no healthy conversations with them. There's only been a few people I've gone true no contact with in my life. And the reason I've done it is because they simply refuse to respect any of my boundaries. They want to treat me however they want to treat me. They want to talk down to me, insult me, ridicule me. And if I ever put my foot down, or God forbid, if I match their actions with it, it would be the end of the world, and they absolutely lose it. And with people like that, there's just no productive conversations to be had. You can't have a productive conversation with them. You can't have a healthy relationship with them. And at that point, why do you want to be there at all? And my thing would be, I don't. And so you go no contact to protect yourself. It's not a punishment. It is not you trying to manipulate or to control them. It is simply to protect yourself. Now, a narcissistic person might accuse you of ghosting. They might accuse you of giving them the silent treatment, or they might accuse you of abandoning them. But that is not what it is. They're going to throw anything against the wall to see what sticks. But you know, and I know when we're doing something to protect ourselves. So, of course, going no contact is ideally permanent. The silent treatment, much more temporary because ultimately they want to manipulate and to control you. If that's the intent of breaking the contact, that is now manipulation and that is a punishment and that is more of a narcissistic tactic. And again, this can be confusing, but what I would say to this is if you have examples of situations, breaking them down. Like those are good things to go over because I'm sure there's a lot of people that they get confused by this kind of thing. And even in the short that I made about this, people were confused by the actions of other people in their family. And one of them was, I'm not going to out who the person was, but their son had gone no contact with them. They don't know why. So they said they don't know why. And it had been a couple weeks. And I think they said their son was on the spectrum, might be a little narcissistic too. And this is something that does happen, right? And most people would say in the beginning, and this is something that Dr. Salerno and I went over, a lot of people would say, oh, it must have been the parents' fault automatically. But Dr. Salerno and I were saying that's not necessarily true. There are kids that can be a little bit pathological. It is not always the parents' fault. Is it sometimes? Absolutely. Absolutely can be sometimes, but you have to take each situation individually. So let's say hypothetically, you've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing wrong. The kid goes no contact with you for a couple weeks and you're supposed to see them later. How would you play that? What I would say is you just want to listen to them. If you truly don't know what you did wrong, just listen to where they're coming from and then you can hear it. And then, and that's when you'll find out. Are they seeing things clearly? Are they kind of twisting and distorting your actions? Are they on level ground themselves? Or do they have a point? Do they have a point with something they're saying? This takes a lot of self honesty to really get to the bottom of. But if you listen, you'll be able to see. Now, a tricky one would be if they get super offended by something that's like really trivial. This is where compatibility issues come into play. And it can be difficult for me too. But there's people out there that have boundaries that to me seem ridiculous, right? They're a boundary for them. It's important to them. But to me, it's like, oh my goodness, this like you like roll your eyes at it, for example. And at that point, what do you do? Because to me, that's more of a compatibility issue. You'll still respect their boundaries if like you care about the person, right? Even if you don't care about them, you should still probably respect them, right? But if there's those compatibility issues going on, it's going to make it more difficult. And sometimes in these family situations, that's what it is. You don't choose your family, and their temperaments and whatever else they have going on in their life can get in the way of a healthy relationship with you. I mean, it just is what it is sometimes. But listening, I think you can't go wrong with listening and hearing somebody out. And hey, if you agree with their assessment and you think, you know what? Yeah, I care about this person. I love this person. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to try to improve my behavior. Now, another possibility would be you listen to them and you think they're just totally wrong. You're like, oh my goodness, that's like not what's going on here at all. You're seeing things completely differently. They see things in a completely different way. You have two different perspectives, two different versions of reality. That's a tricky one, right? Because what do you do in that case? And again, it's hard for me to say without having a specific example in front of me. But in that case, I would say you got to trust your gut. Trust your gut. What do you think? What do you feel? Are you in the right? Are you not in the right? And if you think maybe you're in the right, but you still want to have a relationship with this person, then you have to ask yourself some tough questions. Like, okay, what am I willing to bend here? Like, what am I willing to negotiate? What am I willing to, what's the other word I'm looking for? Just try to find a compromise. That's what it is. Like to have a compromise with the person. And it's tricky. I mean, family situations more than anything, they're going to be tricky. and they're going to present you a lot of these kinds of circumstances. But ultimately, no contact is a boundary to protect ourselves because someone refuses to respect us and our boundaries. And no matter what happens, they twist and distort. They won't listen. They'll just tell us it's our fault no matter what. They'll flip the script. It's impossible to have a healthy relationship with somebody like that. The silent treatment used to punish, manipulate, and to control. Now, to the next one, stonewalling versus taking a break from a conversation versus shutting down because you're being abused. First, let's go over stonewalling. Stonewalling is when a narcissistic person or an abusive person, they shut down in the middle of a conversation because one, it's a difficult conversation they don't want to have, or they're trying to avoid accountability. So what they'll do is they'll derail the conversation and maybe they'll start giving you one word answers. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they'll make weird noises and grunt, or they'll just completely change the subject and act like you're not talking about what you're talking about. And this is somebody that doesn't want to have the conversation. They don't want to have the conversation. They're trying to avoid accountability or avoid the difficult conversation. So they stonewall. And you can get nowhere when somebody stonewalls. When they're stonewalling, it's really difficult to collaborate with somebody that's trying to stonewall because like they shut down, there's not much else you can do, right? They're stonewalling, they're derailing the conversation. And it does take two to collaborate. It doesn't take two to be abusive, but it does take two to collaborate and have a good teammate, right? That's where it does come into play. If one person doesn't want to be a good teammate, if one person doesn't want to collaborate, that's the end. You can't do it on your own. And it's just you're just gonna keep on hitting your head up against the wall at that point. So that's stonewalling. It's a way to manipulate, it's a way to derail a conversation, it's a way to avoid accountability and to not have difficult conversations. Now, taking a break from a conversation that's maybe a little bit heated, that's a mature thing to do. If you know yourself, and rather than maybe say things you would regret or like yell at the other person, maybe even call them names or something, you say, you know what? I want to take a break from this conversation here. And as long as you come back to it at a point, right? I'm not saying put it off forever. That wouldn't be good either. But you say, hey, you know what? Let's sleep on this and we'll come back to this tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with that. And then this is also something that happens. The other person, depending on how emotionally mature they are, they might not like that. And they're going to say, they might say something like, no, you need to talk about this now. And I really wouldn't like that if someone said that to me, because that would make me feel controlled and that would make me even more annoyed. But a mature person that can also respect you too, they should be able to respect it when you say, you know what, let's take a break. Let's take a break from this. Let's sleep on it and let's come back to this tomorrow. Somebody that maybe says, no, you need to do this now. And that is something that absolutely happens. Or maybe they'll block you from leaving even. That's even more obnoxious, but that happens too. To me, those are red flags. Those are things that you don't want to see your partner saying that, because that's someone that they want it done on their terms. They're not thinking about how you think or feel about it in any way. And what they might say to you is, well, you're not thinking about what I think or feel about it. And it's like, well, I'm responsible for me and my actions first and foremost. Can we please just take a break from this conversation and come back tomorrow? If you have somebody in your life that's not going to accept that, that's pretty iffy if you ask me. But that is much different. That's much different than someone stonewalling. Stonewalling is pure manipulation, pure avoiding accountability. Taking a break is an emotionally healthy and mature thing to do because you don't want to say things you regret. And when the emotions are high and emotions can be tense, yeah, it's going to be difficult to have a truly collaborative discussion in some of that. Now, sometimes people really like those volatile arguments. Some people do like that. That's absolutely a thing. Sometimes men like that. I mean, sometimes women like it too. I mean, it just is what it is, right? And sometimes it makes them feel alive. And We'd be lying if we said that wasn't true sometimes for people. It absolutely is true for people sometimes. They like that volatility, it makes them feel alive. And that's also something to note. If that's the kind of person you're with, having someone that's like that, that's not really conducive to a long term relationship. If you're just having fun short term, sure, fine, knock yourself out. But long term, I usually don't see those work out. The things that make a relationship like hot and fun in the beginning are usually the very same things that make a long term relationship with that person difficult. Now, it's not set in stone, it's not black and white, but it is something I've seen a lot. So that's the difference between stonewalling and taking a break from a conversation. The next one, which is when someone shuts down because they're being abused. This is a big one too. And Dr. Salerno and I, there was a lot of confusion about this because one of the things he had said, the way to tell a narcissist or an abusive person in couples counseling is who is collaborating and who is not. And the pushback we got on this was because he said the person that is not collaborating is the toxic person. And so many people said, well, the narcissist is going to fake collaboration in therapy. And it's like, yes, that can happen. Or they said, well, the person who's being abused is going to shut down. And that's not the same as not collaborating. And we would say, also true. Any therapist or psychologist worth their weight in salt, they're going to know that. They're going to know the difference between a narcissistic person not collaborating and someone who has been abused and shuts down. So that is when someone has the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, and shutting down is what? That is freezing. And that's their central nervous system that says, you know what? Nope, I'm done because I'm tired of being mistreated. I'm tired of being abused. And they just shut it off. Boom. That is not stonewalling. That's more of like an involuntary thing because of the 4 Fs, the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. Not the same as somebody not collaborating, not the same as someone who is stonewalling. And how do you know if this is you or not? If you're being abused, if you're being verbally abused, mentally abused, SA'd, physically abused, whatever it is, and then you're scared for your life and you're not emotionally safe with this person, and then you shut down, that's not stonewalling. That's protecting yourself. That's similar to going no contact, right? No contact is to protect yourself. Shutting down in a situation like that, you're just trying to stay safe. And I could have this disclaimer in every one of my videos here, but staying safe physically, emotionally, that's priority number one. The same with your kids too. For your kids' sake, keeping you safe and them safe is always number one. And if there's ever something that you hear me say that maybe could put, if you were to do it, it could put you in danger or your kids in danger, then don't do that. Don't do that thing. Safety has to be number one. A lot of the things I talk about sometimes, it's not always with the expectation that if you do this one thing, it's going to be dangerous. An example of that would be, I'll tell people to go practice gray rock when they can't go no contact with a narcissist. That's when you're calm and boring. You don't give any emotional reactions. You don't overshare. And you keep things to logistics only. Well, some people have said, Jared, gray rock is dangerous for me because it would make my partner mad and then they would get physically violent. So in that case, if that is your story, that would happen to you, then of course, don't practice gray rock. You do what you have to do to stay safe. But that's the point here. No matter what, safety supersedes anything, right? Just that's the warning for everyone here. But when you shut down in these conversations, that's the same thing. You are staying safe because the other person is not safe. But here's the other part. If you're with somebody that you shut down because you're being abused, my next suggestion would be, well, now you got to find a way to leave that situation safely because that is not somebody you should be with. That person is not physically safe. They're not emotionally safe. Why are you there at that point? And some people would say, well, I'm there because of finances, or maybe they'll start to deer, defend, excuse, explain, or rationalize. Or maybe what they'll do is maybe they're stuck because of some other reason, the trauma bond, whatever it is, right? But ultimately, if you're in a situation where you're not safe, and if you shut down because the person's not safe, that's just not a good relationship for you. And that might sound obvious to some people, but when people are in a trauma bond, it might not be so obvious anymore because often they are very confused. They're very confused. And as my friend Adriana would say, when you're confused, it means you're being abused. But that's why clarity becomes a thing. And when I do one on one consultations with people, that's the number one thing. You help them get clarity because if you don't see it clearly, you're not going to be able to take the appropriate action steps. Clarity is number one, then figuring out a way how to practice radical self respect from there. That is the order of operations here, right? But safety. You have to be safe. If you're not with somebody that's safe, you really have to ask yourself, why am I here? And it'd be very interesting for yourself to hear what are those answers. Oh, maybe you don't know what the answer is. Maybe you're in a trauma bond. I don't know. But it's going to be difficult for some people. But let's go do an example here because Paul, or is it Paula? But let's use you as an example if you don't mind. So if you can explain some of the stuff in the comments, we'll go over them as a learning opportunity for everybody if you're comfortable with that. But so let's break it down again before she goes into that. So no contact versus the silent treatment. Silent treatment is punishing. Silent treatment is not quite stonewalling, but it can be also similar to stonewalling as well. But the point is, it's a manipulative tactic. No contact is not manipulation. No contact is a boundary to protect yourself. Much different thing. Stonewalling, another manipulative thing, is to derail a conversation, to avoid accountability. That's when they'll say, I don't know. Or maybe they'll use one word answers, or maybe they will deflect and move the goalposts, or just say, hey, I'm trying to watch the game, or hey, I'm trying to watch my show. Anything to drop the subject, anything to avoid the difficult conversation. And that's different than taking a break. And taking a break is a completely fine thing to do as long as you come back to it in a reasonable amount of time. What's a reasonable amount of time? Well, that depends on the conversation. It depends on the severity. It depends on how important it is. It depends on the timing. It depends on several things. It can be difficult to give very broad generalizations here because I might even say something different depending on the situation. Each situation needs to be taken individually. That can't be understated. But the thing with that stonewalling would be like maybe you want to have an important conversation about like career or an important conversation about the next steps in their relationship. And they don't want to have that conversation. So they shut it down. They shut it down. They don't want to hear it. That is more stonewalling. Now, taking a break, maybe you're having a fight about something with the kids. Maybe there's a fight about how to parent them or something like that. This is just a hypothetical. And you're both getting a little heated about it. And one of you says, you know what? Let's take a break from this. Let's sleep on this, come back at this tomorrow and see how it goes. And this all is with the assumption that you're with somebody that is emotionally healthy too. Because if you're not with somebody who's emotionally healthy, even taking a break might not go well because they're still going to be emotionally unhealthy tomorrow too. So, and this is the other thing I've noticed about healthy relationships, right? When you actually get along well with somebody, you're on the same team and it just works. Like you're on the same page, you get one another, you feel emotionally safe with one another. Everything's 100 times easier when you find the right person for you, right? And part of finding the right person, more importantly, being the right person first. When you are the right person, you are more likely to find the right person. But that part is humongous. And then everything gets 1,000 times easier when you do that. And it sounds so easy to say, right? You say that, of course, Jared, of course, you want to find somebody on your team. Of course, you want to find somebody you get along with. Well, what gets in the way of that? Well, some people really prefer the emotional roller coasters. Sometimes what makes something hot and heavy in the beginning is the exact opposite of that. It's not like safe, it's a little risky, it's a little bit dangerous. And so it's more of an emotional roller coaster with punishments, with rewards, with intermittent rewards. And it can make you feel alive sometimes, especially before you've done the work, especially if you're used to narcissistic parents, emotionally inconsistent parents. That's a big thing, especially when people are younger. I mean, that happens all of the time. Let's get here. So Paula says, it's not easy, but an anger partner told me, I'm tired of you. Afterwards, they say, it's not easy, but an anger partner told me, I'm tired of you. Afterwards, they say, I didn't mean it. Um, Sort of like how they would say a drunk person's words are a sober person's thoughts. I think similar to anger. What people say in anger is often close to what they really mean. And sometimes they've been waiting to say it, and the anger just kind of loosens the filter a little bit. But that's something I wouldn't ignore. I wouldn't ignore that. Let's say that. Yeah, I mean, I totally get why you would say that. Hello there, Ellie. So where was I? So taking a break, if you're with someone that you get along with, you're on the same team, you can solve problems together, you can collaborate together. It shouldn't be a problem taking a break. It just shouldn't. Now, the other one, shutting down because you're being abused. I mean, this happens all the time in trauma bonds, right? And shutting down, fawning is kind of another version of shutting down, right? Where you just kind of go along with it to stay safe. Freezing and fawning, pretty close. Now, fighting's one I mentioned before, right? That's when someone really likes that emotional roller coaster. You get two people when they're activated, they're both in fight, then you'll see the fireworks. Think maybe a narcissist and a borderline. I think of that song Love the Way You Lie by Rihanna and Eminem. To me, that sounds like two people that are both in fight, and it's maybe like a narcissist with a borderline. That's what that song always sounds like to me. But yeah, you want the person that you can be safe with. And if you're in a situation where you have to shut down to stay safe, whether it's fawning or freezing, that's a red flag to pay attention to. Because why are you in a situation like that? And I'm not saying that to blame you. I'm just saying that so that you can become aware of what's going on. Why are you there? What's going on here? Do you think that no one's going to love you if this person doesn't? Do you make excuses for their behavior? Do you dare, defend, excuse, explain, or rationalize? Do you not want to be single? Do you think you're getting older and it's going to be more difficult for you to find somebody now that you're older? And I'm not pulling these explanations out of my ass. I've heard every one of these literally from clients of mine, etc. It's what people say to themselves, and it can get people in a lot of trouble. George, can I define a borderline? So, what I would say a borderline is ultimately it's someone that has a fear of abandonment, for one, and they can often be very impulsive, have unstable sense of self, lots of mood swings, ups and downs, lefts and rights. They can split on people, go from all black to all white. They can also lack object constancy. They will often have addictions or self-harming behaviors, whether it's cutting or sometimes if it's a woman, they'll be very promiscuous. They'll say that's a form of self-harm in some cases. A lot of them have addiction stuff going on, or depression going on, or anxiety going on. They'll have a favorite person. That's one of the big things with borderlines, right? They'll have this ideal love. And they have a different kind of version of the love bomb, devalue, discard routine. They'll idealize in the beginning. And then what happens oftentimes is the other person does one thing wrong, and then they can't idealize them anymore. And then when they can't idealize them, they kind of split. And some borderlines will tell you, well, I'm very justified in my split. And I would say sometimes. Sometimes. I've also seen them split over the most trivial reasons as well. Like you mess up one thing that's a small thing and they blow it up into a big thing and they split. But those are what you see in borderline patients, and they are more aware of it a lot of times too, by the way. A lot of borderlines know there's something up. Now, just because they know something's up doesn't mean they're in a good place with it either. No, that does not mean that at all. But they do have awareness, which can trick some people, right? It's the same thing with the self-aware narcissist, where they can trick people because, oh, I'm aware. I'm aware I'm a narcissist. And it's like, oh, they must be better. They must be improving if they're aware. And I would say definitely not always. Definitely not always, because some of them they're aware and they don't really do much to change their behavior. They're aware and they mistreat people and they really just don't care. And they justify it to themselves any number of ways, but at the end of the day, they're not treating people well. But again, if you're in a freezing or a fawning situation with somebody, that is something to look into. And I totally get some people are trapped because of finances. And sometimes the trap is in our mind too, unfortunately. That's part of the trauma bonds. Like the chains can be in our heads sometimes too, which reminds me of the elephant and the rope analogy. For those of you who don't know the elephant and the rope analogy, it's as follows. Say you have a circus, like Barnum and Bailey, and they get a baby elephant. And when the elephant is a baby, they can tie it with a rope to a stake. And the stake's not even that big. But when it's a baby, it can't break free. And what will happen is they'll keep on using the same rope and stick so that even by the time the elephant's an adult, it just stops even trying because when it was a baby, it couldn't break free from the rope. And this is something that it can similarly happen in these kinds of relationships too, where in a trauma bond, it's a situation where, okay, what you think in your head is bigger than the actual problem. It might actually be a small thing you have to do differently, and you'll be on your way to freedom. But in your head, just like the elephant that remembers when it was a baby, I couldn't escape this when I was a baby, so I'm not going to try now. I think something similar can happen to when you're in a trauma bond. You think of this thing, and you're just in a mental prison, which is true. And sometimes we have to break through that mental prison to get out. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it definitely happens. Paul says, really, I'm very understanding. I just want to be understood. When I challenge them, I get shut up and I don't want to listen to your voice. It's impossible. Now, I mean, what I would say just from hearing that is, I mean, why are you with somebody that's talking to you like that? That's what I would say about that. If you want to be understood and you're constantly feeling misunderstood, that's also probably a problem. Now, on the flip side, a self-improvement saying is seek more to understand than be understood. But with abusive people, with toxic people, with narcissists, that saying will get you in trouble. You don't want to do that with people like that. They're just going to take advantage of that. But if someone's, because they're belittling you in that case, if they're going to act like that, they're not treating you well in that case. It doesn't sound like an emotionally safe environment at that point. So I don't know how long you've been with this person, or if you're married, or if you have kids or something, but doesn't sound the best, I will say. But again, I don't know much about it. I'm just going by the comments that you're saying here. And you got to be careful getting advice when someone doesn't know the full issue. Like if you don't know the full conversation, you don't know the full breakdown, it's going to be difficult to give accurate suggestions when you don't know the whole story. The more you know, the more accurate your suggestions will be able to be. And that's true for therapy too. Anyone who goes to therapy, they're only going to be able to help you to the extent that you're honest with the therapist. Now, part of it is the therapist having a safe environment where you feel comfortable opening up to them. And it's also up to the therapist to an extent to ask the right questions as well. That's definitely part of it. But at the end of the day, if the person on the couch there isn't going to be honest, not much that therapist is going to be able to do. And this happens a lot with narcissists too. Narcissists go to therapy and they're not honest, or they tell half truths, or they tell lies of omission. And in those cases, then it becomes different. The therapist, they can try to get to the bottom of it. They can try to ask follow-up questions, but if they're just not getting the truth, whatever suggestions they give, they're giving them with not the entire information. When they don't have the whole information, it's going to be tough. It just is. And some narcissists, they'll go to therapy just because they want validation, or they want to triangulate you with the therapist. These are things that happen. But if that's their intention, that's not too good. That's not too good. But Ellie, how are you, by the way? I saw you there before. And George, how are you? I was thinking, I saw today Orion Taraban is on Brad Carr's channel, and I was listening to some of that. I wasn't really that interested in what I was hearing so far. I was trying to find if he was going to start talking about narcissism a little bit, but they didn't yet. They're talking a little bit about relationships and manipulation, and some of it was interesting, but we'll see. It's transatlantic. I'm staying with them in Ecuador. I'm from the UK, so I thought it was a culture thing. I've known the person 20 years, but not lived together permanently. I mean, sometimes cultural stuff is a thing for sure. Like some places are more patriarchal, for example. They just want people to sit down and shut up, do as you're told. Yeah, that's a thing in some places. Now, that wouldn't really fly in America, but other things were. Oh, no, that's no good, Ellie. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I can't complain. I've just been on the grind here, driven and focused. I got several big interviews coming up. I added another one to the docket. So besides Dr. Carey and besides Josh, there's another one. This other guy is interesting. He talks about relationships, capitalist porn, and medical stuff like vaccines. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because he's all over the place. Like everyone could like him or dislike him in some ways. Yes, I would tend to agree with that, George. Like if they can't be bothered to understand you or even try, and they just shut you down and belittle you, there's not much you can do with that. Like that's just not a good spot. And you've known him for 20 years, so you know who he is now at this point, right? But here's the thing, maybe not though. If you didn't live with them, you can think you know somebody, but until you're actually seeing them one-on-one, like you don't truly know. Like you can just have a distance relationship with somebody, long distance. Somebody can hide a lot in those scenarios, right? You don't see them. You don't know what's going on when you're not talking to them. So you can know a lot about somebody and still not know them. That's another thing to remember there, because that happens too. But so now that you're there, I think now you're seeing. Uh-oh, like maybe this isn't too good here. And just the fact that you're even here and confused and talking about it, that's a sign too. That's a sign that something's up. And let's face it, like usually if someone is searching through the narcissistic content online to make sense of their relationship, that's already not a good sign. I'm not guaranteeing it, but it's already not a good sign. Yeah, Ellie, I mean, I got those 3 coming up. I'm trying to get Marcella back just to talk about some things. Who knows what? I'm sure I'll get Kelly back on too. I want to get Cece back too, for that matter. I think Cece's been going through some stuff. I've been seeing her on Instagram, been crying about some things. I don't know what's up with her, but she's feeling her emotions, you know? There's nothing wrong with that. I think she went through a tough breakup, maybe going through a rough time. But no, I really like Cece and her energy, so I'll try to reach out to her and see what's going on with her. See if she wants to come back around and talk about some things, because she got some valuable insights. And this is her book. Show Up as Her by Cece. This was a good book. She thinks a lot like me. So people should check that book out. My friend Kelly's writing a book too that'll be coming out later this year, early next year. I think many of you would like that one too. So, more and more of that mode of thinking. Yes, I think that would be best because it doesn't sound like that person's on your team. It doesn't sound like they have the most amount of respect for you. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And who else will I get on here? I might try to get Dr. Denise back on here too. And I might try to experiment with getting maybe Dr. Salerno or other people to come on with multiple people. For example, Dr. Salerno, I'll give you guys the inside scoop here. He wanted to talk to me and Christian John. But Christian John was a little, I don't know, apprehensive about it. I don't know why. I think it's because Christian has like a dominant personality, and I think he's a little concerned about how he might clash with Dr. Salerno. But Dr. Salerno is very understanding, so I don't think that would really be a problem. But you never know. You never know until you're with somebody, right? How it's going to be. Then you'll know. Or maybe I'll try to get Dr. Simon on with more people as well. I think the people would like that too. But before I move on from the topic here, any other questions about no contact versus the silent treatment, or stonewalling versus taking a break versus shutting down freeze response? Any other questions about that? Yeah, we'll see what we can do with him. I wonder if he would speak to Dr. Eatonson. He might. Or maybe Sam Vaknin. I get Sam Vaknin to maybe talk to Dr. Salerno. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, if you get shut down every time you see something that needs to be called out, that's not too good. That's not too good. You're not going to get too far with that. You can't collaborate with somebody that's like that. If you can't collaborate, you're not going to problem solve. All you have is someone that just wants you to listen and do as you're told in that case. That's control. Not collaboration, that is control. And in a good relationship, you're going to want more than that, especially when you're older. You don't got who's got time for that? As you get older, you don't want relationships like that. I mean, you never want relationships like that, but it's more understandable when you're younger. When you're younger, sure, that's life. Growing pains. You make mistakes. You learn things. But as you get older, nah. Because once some people, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. If they're still that way into their 40s and 50s, that's it. That's how that person is. They're not interested in changing. They've probably been that way their entire life. Simon and Carrie would be an interesting one. How about Vaknin and Salerno? Would you like that? Yeah, you don't want to do that much longer because no one knows how long we have. I mean, no one's promised tomorrow. And I mean, I think the average lifespan for men in America is 74 to 75. The average lifespan for women in America is, I think, like 81 or 2 ish. So life goes by in the wink of an eye, as Jackson Brown would say. In the end, it's the wink of an eye. But I don't think Vaknin likes me, so that could be a problem with getting him and Salerno on here. That might backfire. Now that I think of it, and I don't know. I don't even know if Vaknin will collaborate with that. By the way, I'm not sure he'd be down for that. I don't think he likes his views being questioned. I think he would rather just be the authority and have people listen. Yeah, I know what you meant, Ellie. That would be interesting, but just like interesting things to go over. And that's the other interesting thing is when I break down videos as long as Sam Vaknin and Dr. Salerno. Wouldn't that be interesting? Because Sam Vaknin, he is more aligned with Dr. Eatonson, I would say. It doesn't mean he disagrees with everything Dr. Salerno says, but I do think he's more aligned with Dr. Eatonson, and that's something to remember too. And because I think he's more environmental based with things. He's talking about what goes on because of the environment. The environment does this, the child doesn't individuate, and then it causes this, and they have the guilt, and they split, and the bad objects and all that stuff. That's the environmental view. And I don't necessarily completely agree with that all the time. I think there's cases where it could be true. I just am very hesitant to think it's always true. Because I think, as Dr. Simon said, nah, some of these people, they need more guilt. They need more shame. They're not like full of toxic shame. It's like they're shameless. That's the problem. So that's why I don't always buy that explanation, because some people, Brene Brown would say, and that's someone I should go over too. I'll break down some Brene Brown videos with, she's been on Diary of a CEO and other places, probably Mel Robbins. But she's notorious for saying narcissism is a shame-based fear of being ordinary. Yeah, it sounds plausible. It sounds plausible, right? But is it true? Dr. Salerno doesn't think so. H.G. Tudor doesn't think so. But Brene Brown does. Dr. Eatonson probably does. Sam Vaknin probably does. What do I think? I think sometimes I don't think narcissism is a shame-based fear of being ordinary, but I do think narcissists might fear being ordinary, if that makes sense. I do think narcissists fear being ordinary because they want to be special. They want to have their grandiose sense of self. They want to be different and better than everybody else. But is that shame-based? That's where I would disagree. I don't think that's shame-based. And I think, but that was the traditional belief. They would all say, no, it's shame-based. It must be shame. It's like, I don't know. Yes, I totally agree. They would fight, Ellie. H.G. Tudor and Vaknin would fight. Like the Itchy and Scratchy show. Yeah, shame brings humility, as it should, right? As true guilt should too. And that's why I disagreed with Dr. K. He says, oh, they're doing this because they feel guilt. I was like, I don't know. Sometimes, but I don't think all of the time. Another thing I get is abandoned in the street. I turn my back and partner gone, possibly in a shop, but I'm often left alone and confused, especially over here in South America. I mean, do you communicate that? Do you say like, hey, don't leave me? I don't know where I am. I mean, a guy who has your best interest at mind, especially if they know that's something you don't like, you would think they would try to do something about that. Now, if they don't know, they could maybe say they don't know, but you clearly don't like it. So if you've said it and they still do it, that's not good. That's not good. HG is somewhere in Europe, George. I don't know exactly where. I think it is hard for them to understand, Ellie. I think one of the big differences is if you've lived with them or not. If you've lived it, you've experienced it, not just in a therapist's office, not just reading about it in a textbook, but no, you've experienced it. This is especially true if you've had a narcissistic parent, because that was one of your primary caregivers. That was every day of your life. The exception being if your parents were split up and there was maybe only weekends, if at all, right? That happens too. But if you had a narcissistic parent, that's every day. That's every day you have these tactics. Every day you see what's going on. And that's just something you can't replicate. Not everyone's going to understand that. because you can't replicate that. And then so often the people that had a narcissistic parent, they have romantic relationships with narcissists as well. So they get double trouble. That was me. I had both. So I see it. I see it. And I can see the people that they just haven't. They haven't. And sometimes what the environmental people say, some of it makes sense to me, but I also think a lot of times it's a very charitable interpretation. When I was listening to Dr. K, I was like, this is a charitable interpretation of what's going on here, I think. I think the truth is a little bit more dark than what some people would like to admit. And some people have a hard time like truly seeing that no, they're just different. They're not normal. They're different. And even the professionals, they can struggle with it too, right? They think, oh, because a normal person might feel guilt if they hurt somebody. They might think twice. And they try to put a narcissist behavior through that lens. But it's just not the right way to try. They have a different starting point. Their starting point is just different than everybody else's. And when you neglect that fact, you're going to get the suggestions wrong. You're going to get the diagnosis wrong when you do that. If you lived it with them, the true experience of that type of abuse is distinct from all others. I agree with that, Ellie. I agree. That's exactly what I did. Married a narcissist after being raised by a narcissist, sociopath, and sadist. Oh, that's even worse. The sociopath and sadist part. So you've probably seen some sadistic smiles and enjoyment of your pain and discomfort. That is super obnoxious, right? Like, especially when they see you uncomfortable or in pain and you see their face light up and they're basically thrilled that you're uncomfortable or in pain. Those are the snapshots in your head that you can remember for a long time. I've got a few of those snapshots I'm thinking of, and totally obnoxious. But that's the sadistic side. They love it. They love seeing you uncomfortable, in distress, embarrassed. They love that. And it's such a slap in the face. It's an emotional slap in the face. Yeah, but the sadists, they're no good. No good. Yours, it is no good. Only I get a tantrum. I was shaking from last time. Yeah, I mean, that's just no good then, Paul. Or Paula. I guess I'm not sure what your name is. But that's no good. That doesn't sound like a good situation. It sounds like an unsafe situation. And it sounds like a situation to try to leave safely, if you ask me. Yeah, I'm familiar. I had a cousin that would do those sadistic things, and I would see that sadistic smile. So obnoxious, hideous. And a lot of them are like that, though. Like, it's not as uncommon as some people would like you to think. And I tend to think also some of these narcissists that even the professionals know, they just are on their best behavior in front of the therapist. Some of their crap still slips through, and that's what the therapist sees. But the real flip side is something that the therapist just doesn't see. And you know what? For as much as I can disagree with Bundy Bancroft on a couple things and how he sees things, I think his prognosis of abusers, period, is pretty accurate. It's more accurate than what many therapists would say, because he says, what you see in group session, what you see in individual therapy, that's not the whole picture. You have to talk to the family. You have to talk to the romantic partner to really figure out what's going on, because some of the people that act the best in treatment are acting the worst behind closed doors. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of professionals don't know that. I mean, you would think they would, right? You would think they would know that, but a lot of them seem like they don't. A lot of them seem like no, they're really improving, and they wouldn't be sadistic like that. They wouldn't enjoy Duper's delight. They don't have the narcissistic smirk, but it's like actually they do. Actually, they do. You're just not seeing it, but it's there behind closed doors. It certainly is. Ellie says the sadists cannot hide their pleasure in hurting you. It will show. Yes. And the thing is, like the therapists, they don't see that side. Like if there's no scenario where they're seeing that person get enjoyment from someone else being hurt, they're just not seeing it. And at that point, unless the narcissistic or sociopathic person is being honest about it and telling on themselves, they're not even going to know. And let's face it, a lot of sadistic people aren't going to therapy anyway. They're not going anyway. I would never sit down to therapy with my mother ever. I don't blame you, because for some people, that's just going to cause more trouble. Like you go to therapy with somebody like that, like you open up in front of them, they're going to use all that against you. And you don't want that. And they'll triangulate the therapist with you. You got to have a certain healthy baseline to even try something like that. And if they don't have a healthy baseline, I would never recommend you even try. Don't even try. You have to be working with a good portion of healthy first. If you're not, don't even bother, because it's not going to do anything. They're going to twist and distort things. They're not going to listen, and it's going to drive you crazy. And that's not what you want. You don't want that. But all right. I think it's about it here for today. We went over some good topics here. Hell no is right, Ellie. You don't need that. I mean, and still, people know that, and they still try anyway. I've spoken to people that they've wanted me to do multiple sessions with them and their narcissistic partner. And I'm like, this is not going to work. This is going to go nowhere. And sometimes it's tempting anyway, because you're like, well, it's a session, right? You get paid. But at the same time, it's like, no, like, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? It's the trauma bond is why they want to do it. But, and some people, they see it, like they see what's going on, but they just can't break free. And they have this mental loop. The mental loops, they really get people stuck. These mental loops, you got to watch out for them. Yes, it definitely is easy for them to fool people. But the mental loops that keep people stuck in a trauma bond, you got to watch out for them. And examples of the mental loops would be them thinking it's their own fault, why they're being abused. That's a common mental loop. Another mental loop is people that are afraid to be alone and they feel intense loneliness and they think about doing the right things. And then when they do, then they feel that intense loneliness and then they go back to the unhealthy situation. That's another common example I hear of the unhealthy loops. Hope dope, hot tamales. I love it. No more dope dealers, hope dealers, they call it, right? Good to have this outlet and support. Thanks to everybody. Yeah, I'm happy to be here for you all. I might be here on Thanksgiving too. I figured that there are some people, especially on holidays, that could use a little bit of support and have like a respite, a respite from their family madness if they can't go no contact. That's something I'm thinking about doing. We'll see. But how are things there, hot tamales? We were talking about no contact versus the silent treatment, and stonewalling versus taking a break from a conversation and shutting down, freezing, or fawning. Common things. No. Thursday. Thursday's wing day, Ellie. Last week I had my pre-Thanksgiving. I don't know what I'm going to do on the day of, actually. And what other topics would you all like to see me to go over? Also, question for you all too. Do you prefer the live streams or do you prefer recorded videos sometimes that are longer, or do you prefer a combination of both? Because the recorded videos that are longer, they are, they're more probably more value packed if I had to guess, but I think I do a lot of value in these too. Like when I talk for an hour, we talk about all different subjects. Noted there, hot tamales. Noted. The thing is, I've gotten pretty good at coming up with the shorts topics, but sometimes it's harder for me to stretch it into a longer video, which is weird because I can do it in a live stream. Like I can talk about things longer in a live stream, but in a recorded video, it's different. Something about a recorded video, I wanted it to be like exactly right. Like every shorts video that I do, I have it exactly right. And it's easier because it's 60 seconds or less. So less time to screw up, less time to make errors. I got you, Paulie. Trying to dealing with trying to unstuck myself. Recorded. Why do you feel like you're stuck? I recorded this yesterday, Phil Bradley. And this is all just part of the simulation that we're here. Well, you know what they say, Ellie. This too shall pass, is what they say. Whatever it is, it'll pass. You just keep on moving forward one step at a time. And if you fall, you get back up again. The one thing you don't do is give up. So literally physically stuck. I get you. That is one of the more annoying ones. I'll give you that. And usually what happens is finances are getting in the way, right? That's the people that are the most stuck. That's usually what it is. And unfortunately, that's the hardest person to help too. Because at that point, what do? You can try to get resources. You can try to see if there's programs available for you or whatever, but it's tough. It's tough. And it's a matter of coping. It becomes more about coping with the situation than breaking free a lot of times. And because you got to figure it out too, because your brother's got some wild stuff going on. Yes, also true. But you got to figure out what someone's maximum capacity is because everyone has a different maximum capacity. Everyone has a different ceiling. So you got to figure out what someone's ceiling is and then work from there. But because not everyone has the same ceiling, some people have different limitations than other people, more things holding them back. And I guess each situation is unique, but with common traits. Yeah, I mean, that's generally true with the narcissist stuff. So many of them act in such similar ways that people can relate. People can relate to it because they've heard something similar. That doesn't mean they're all exactly the same. There's different types of narcissists and there's different levels of severity. That being said, like they do have a lot of overlapping stuff going on. Certainly a lot of overlapping stuff. And definitely be safe with your brother there too, Ellie. I don't know how you handle that, but he sounds like he could be a little bit unhinged. Yeah, you listen to some Red Hot Chili Peppers, break on through to the other side. Oh, that's the Doors. Oh, they both have a song. Red Hot Chili Peppers have a song, Other Side, but that's not break on through to the other side. I would say, yeah, hold on tight. Hold on tight. And I would say use the tools on him. You don't want to trigger him, especially if booze is a thing with him too. I know you said your neighbor was more of the boozer, but with the brother, the one I'm thinking of, that can still be rough too, especially considering what he's done to you. Not good. Definitely not good. But all right, everybody, I'm about to wrap this up here and be looking forward to some more video breakdowns I'll do. The time flies by faster also with the video breakdowns, but I also enjoy talking to you all here too. So I like doing both. I definitely like doing both. So Ellie and George and Mama Black Sheep, and is it Paul or Paula? I experience a weird brother too. Tatted every time he passed me and other stuff. No, not good. Yeah, sometimes they are. I have seen narcissists come by these parts. They come by, and sometimes they've reached out to me for help too. Now, granted, I don't talk about that much because those are usually the less severe ones, but they have. Or some people are trying to figure out if it's them or not. And sometimes it's because their partner's telling them they are, and they start to believe it. But occasionally, someone that is kind of narcissistic and knows it, they come here too. But they're not usually the severe ones. The severe ones aren't going to do that. You got it, Ellie and George and Paula and Paul, or Paul Meyer Music. I like it. And I also like the Black Sheep name too, of course. But all right. Till next time, everybody. Over and out. And Phil Bradley, we could never forget you. Never late nor early. On time, just like a wizard.